By my own nature, this is a challenging vlog to make from a board gaming perspective because at its core, at my core, I am a completionist. It's part of that obsessive personality, especially if it's a title, especially if it's a game that I enjoy. I want to have all the content. I want to have everything sleeved. I want the BGG fan content laminated, printed. I want all of those options in the moment because if it's a title that we enjoy, you can never get enough of a good thing. But I also recognize expansion bloat. And in exploring expansion bloat, there's this duality of the more content that you add, depending on the positioning of the expansion, is it really adding to the experience? That's the question. That's the checklist we're going to build in this board gaming vlog. And I'm going to pull myself back. I'm going to pull that obsessive personality completionist back for a moment and really try to look at this. Because in some of the titles, even that when I have everything to play, an example would be Runebound 3rd Edition. Right now, my number one favorite game, do I really play all of it? And in what capacity? So what we see with expansion bloat is, depending on the expansion, and it could be either or both, the addition of new components, new bosses to fight, new monsters, new item and equipment cards, new characters, in addition to new rules to play. An example would be Descent 2nd Edition, another title that I really, really enjoy playing and exploring. There's the idea that in the expansions, you get new characters. That's awesome. You get new scenarios. That's awesome. You get new gear. That's fantastic. But you also get additional rules to explore. And one of the rules that I enjoy would be secret doors. You're in a dungeon. Secret doors can open up randomly and have little side quests and other little opportunities to explore. That's kind of neat. You know, I'm sold on that. Let's do that. But as we add more and more expansions, more and more optional rules, even if they're very well done, the Secret Doors and Descent 2nd are very well done. Now you're adding on more layers to not only remember, but this bloat to possibly take away from the narrative. Too much complexity is too much. And one could say, well, Fritz, just go play a Euro, right? Depends on your focus. Likewise, the footprint of the game. I was playing Magic Realm. Classic game. And I say playing in that I was probably getting 80% of it right. I mean, it's a fantastic title, very complex, very interesting. But what you see with Magic Realm is the components at the time, very Avalon Hill, very war game, meaning you've got the cardboard components, you've got a set of dice, and then the rest are all just cardboard tokens with an image stamped on them or numbers stamped on them. You know, what does A1 mean? What does A2? What does Smoke 3? What does Bones 4 mean? If you look at that game and now you were to update it by what's expected, you know, now in 2020, not counting the artwork and stuff like that, naturally the taste and the style would be updated from the 70s to now, but just everything would be miniatures, everything would be components, everything would have to be sized. There's a lot of dragons in Magic Realm, so massive dragon miniatures and models and different characters and expansions. So what we also see sometimes, depending on the physical footprint, if we look at the expansions for Runebound 3rd Edition, and even 2nd Edition to a greater extent, we have the physical footprint of the board. As you add more stuff, tokens, cards, counters, there's more stuff, but the footprint doesn't necessarily grow. Dark Souls. I love Dark Souls. The board game. Love digital too, but I just don't have the patience to necessarily play it. Dark Souls is a miniatures game, heavy miniatures game, but also content game as you add more expansions. And you need the expansions. They're awesome. But the bloat is not in the rules because the mechanics rules work the same, or invaders and summons adds on such a minor point it's not really noticeable. But now you have more and more miniatures on the table. So when I play Dark Souls, it's the entire dining room table because 1/3 of the table are all the miniature trays. The characters, the armor sets, the mega boss, the main boss, Minions 1, Minions 2. It's a lot. So I look at this and I say, Generally, I find I prefer smaller expansions. If we look at big box, small box, big box is going to be new everything. I tend to be more interested in, these are the core rules. I'd like to add on some more adventurers or characters for the story, because that offers massive replay. That's like rule number one. Just having diversity of characters means even if it's the same scenario, lots of fun things to explore. I would also like to have more items and more quests, but additional areas to explore, additional layers. Usually what we see in the big box expansions, now it really, really, really starts to bloat. It really starts to pull things. And the question is, does it make it to the table as much? With Runebound 3rd edition, I find myself playing a lot of the similar scenarios just because of the bloat. Descent 2nd edition, while I've had many great memories moving through it, at this point it's really just core plus one, just to have it be manageable. And that's not to say we don't pull out everything and mix it up and have a day of going about it. But I think if we analyze, 10 plays, 5 to 8 plays, 10 plays of your game, what does the majority of those plays look like? So now I'm going to step back in my obsessive personality, because this entire vlog, I'm like, must have all expansions, must have all content, must have more miniatures and plastic. It's that Wargamer pulling me in. Your thoughts on core game plus expansion, big box, small box, and the relationship in your collection to that importance?